Hello, my name is Hope, also known as Hopey Dope, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to teach you how to make the StarChild cardigan, but first, we need to grab some supplies. Now that the bag has been secured, let's go ahead and get into it. Starting off with the supplies, you're going to need scissors, a darning needle, and a 9mm hook for the cardigan panels. And now for the yarn, we will be using the Caron Blossom cakes, and you will need 3 of these total. We're going to go ahead and start off by making a slip knot. And now we're going to go ahead and chain 4. Now that we have our chain of 4, you're going to go ahead and slip stitch to that first chain. By doing this, it replaces the magic ring and it's more secure in my opinion. So we're going to go ahead and chain up 3. And in this pattern, when we chain up 3, it does count as a double crochet. Now we're going to go ahead and place 2 more double crochets in that ring. And this makes our first cluster. Now moving on to a corner, you're going to go ahead and chain 3 and place another cluster of 3 double crochets. There's 1, 2, and 3. Now you're going to go ahead and chain 3. And place another cluster of 3 double crochets. You're just going to repeat this process all the way around until you have a total of 6 double crochet clusters. This makes number 4. This is cluster number 5. And now that finishes up cluster number 6. So from here, you're going to go ahead and chain 3. And we're just going to slip stitch to the top of that 3rd chain. So that just finished up the first row, and you'll see now there is 6 points. And as it works up, it's going to be able to fold into a panel. Now to start up row 2, we're going to go ahead and slip stitch over to the corner. And that's 1, 2, and 3. Now we chain up 3, and we're going to place 2 double crochets. Now since this is the corner, we're going to chain 3 and place another cluster of 3 double crochets. Now in the rest of the corners, you're going to go a cluster of 3, chain 3, and another cluster of 3. Now we're going to go ahead and close off this round by slip stitching to that top chain. Now we're going to go ahead and slip stitch to the corner. And now chain up 3. You're going to place 2 double crochets, chain 3, and then place another cluster of 3 double crochets. Okay, so here's where this row gets a little different. We will be working in the gaps along the sides as well. We're going to place a single cluster of 3 double crochets in the gaps. Just like this. And again, for the corners, it's going to be a cluster of 3, chain 3, and another cluster of 3. And you're going to go ahead and repeat this all the way around. You're going to put in your corners cluster of 3, chain 3, and a cluster of 3, and in the middle gap you will place a single cluster of 3, and we're going to meet at the end. Now that we have reached the end of this row, we're going to go ahead and slip stitch to the top of this chain. And as you work up your rows, you're going to notice that the shape of this starts to distort a little bit, and that's completely fine. Don't worry about it. And now we're just going to go ahead and slip stitch over to the corner. So from this point on, in the corners, you're going to put a cluster of 3, chain 3, and another cluster of 3. And in these gaps in between, you're going to put a single cluster of 3 double crochets. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and chain up 3. Place 2 double crochets, chain 3, and then place another cluster of 3 double crochets. Now the first corner is finished. we're going to go ahead and move on to the side where we place clusters in each gap. And there's one. And there's the second one. Now moving on to another corner, you're going to place a cluster of 3, chain 3, and another cluster of 3. Okay, so we're going to continue this pattern all the way around until you reach the end of this row. And remember, in those gaps in between the corners, you place clusters of double crochets. So for an example, in your next row, you will place your corner, cluster, 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 corner. So go ahead and finish the rest of this row and I'll meet you at the end. So I'm just going to go ahead and place my last double crochet for this cluster and then slip stitch to the top of this chain. And like always, you're going to slip stitch over to the corner. So from here, you should have an idea on how to work up the pattern. In the corners, you do cluster, chain 3, cluster, and in the gaps in between, you will place your clusters of 3 double crochets. And you're just going to repeat this all the way around until you reach the end of row 26. Now I've reached the end of row 26, I'm just going to place my last double crochet and slip stitch to that top chain. Now I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch to the corner. Now we're going to go ahead and just chain 1. And you're going to pull up your loop, but we're going to end up pulling a very long tail end because we're going to use this tail end later to sew the panel. So you're just going to go ahead and repeat this process all over again until you have a total of 2 panels. And this is a little peek of what your panel will be looking like once you fold it in half. It's definitely gorgeous and I am obsessed with these colors. And this is just a little example on how you fold your panel. Of course, this is a smaller version so I can keep it in frame, but it's very simple. All you do is fold it in half like this. You're gonna end up having a armhole, but we will be sewing across the top. This is where the cuff will go. And then once you make your second panel, we will actually be sewing the back seam of both panels together. And that's what makes the whole cardigan. Let's go ahead and sew along the top of the panel so we can make our sleeve. So we're just going to take our yarn end and we're going to sew along all this. I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do it. So you simply just take your yarn end and you will be picking up the loops like this. for both sides of the panel, and you just thread it through. So I like to take the outer loops, and those are the loops I like to pick up for when I'm sewing. It just makes it look very clean when you're finished. And you're just going to do this all the way across until you reach the other corner. And so far, this is what it should be looking like. It's definitely a very, very clean way of sewing it together, in my opinion at least. And you sew along all the way until you reach that second chain of the chain 3 space in the corner. And from there, just sew in your ends and fasten off. And now moving on to the star pockets. As you can see, it's bigger than my hand, so I feel like that's a perfect size. And just like the 2 panels for the cardigan, you're going to end up needing 2 of these star pockets, and you're also going to leave a long tail end to help sew it to the panels. So for the supplies, it is optional to use the stitch markers, but you're going to need scissors and a 4mm hook. And the yarn used is the Loops&Threads Soft and Shiny, and it is in the color yellow. So to get started, you're going to go ahead and make a slip knot and then chain 4. Now go ahead and slip stitch to that first chain to make a loop. You're going to go ahead and chain up 3, and that chain 3 counts as a double crochet. And from here, you're going to go ahead and add another 19 double crochets into that loop for a total of 20 double crochets. Now that you're at the end of that row, you're going to go ahead and slip stitch to that top chain. To begin row 2, we're going to go ahead and chain up 3. And then place 2 double crochets into that same stitch. Now chain 3. And place another cluster of 3 double crochets into that same stitch. Okay, so from here, we're going to skip a stitch and then place a single crochet into the following stitch. Now skip another stitch and place a cluster of 3 double crochets into the next stitch. You're then going to go ahead and chain up 3 and then place another cluster of 3 double crochets into that same space. You're just going to repeat that pattern all the way around where you do your cluster, chain 3, cluster, skip 1, single crochet, skip 1, and then do it all over again. And then meet me at the end. So now I'm at the end of this row and I'm just finishing up my last couple of stitches. You'll see after that last cluster there's only 3 stitches left, so I'm going to go ahead and skip 1 and place a single crochet in the middle. And from there you're going to slip stitch to the top of this chain to close the round. So this is the end of row 2. It's definitely cute. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to row 3. Slip stitch over 1. Now chain up 3. And the chain 3 space does count as a double crochet. In the next stitch, place another double crochet. Now in the corner, you are going to place a cluster of 3 double crochets, chain 3, and then place another cluster of 3 double crochets. And that's going to be the exact same pattern for every single corner. Now that I'm done with the corner, we're going to go ahead and place a double crochet into the next 2 stitches. Now you're going to go ahead and skip over the next 3 stitches, and then place a double crochet into the following 2. Now you're going to go ahead and do your corner of a cluster of 3, chain 3, and another cluster of 3. And you're going to repeat this pattern all the way around until you reach the end of this row. I'm just finishing up my last double crochet, and then I'm going to slip stitch to the top chain of the beginning of this row. Now to begin row 4, you're going to go ahead and slip stitch over 1 space. Now chain up 3 and place a double crochet into every stitch until you reach the corner. And for the corner, you're going to do a cluster of 3 double crochets, chain 3, and another cluster of 3 double crochets. Now that you're finished with the corner, you're going to go ahead and place a double crochet into the next 4 stitches. Now go ahead and skip over these 2 stitches, and you're going to go ahead and place a double crochet into the next 4 stitches. And then you're going to go ahead and do your corner stitches of a cluster of 3, chain 3, and another cluster of 3. Now go ahead and repeat this pattern all the way around until you reach the end of this row. Now I'm just finishing up my last stitch, and then we're going to slip stitch to that top chain of the beginning of the row. So you're just going to go ahead and repeat that same increase pattern for each row until you reach row 7, where you only skip 2 stitches in that valley space. And I'll check in with you at the end of each row. So this is what row 5 should be looking like, and row 6, and the final row 7. Now repeat that pattern over again until you have a total of 2 panels. And once we've closed off the last round, you're going to go ahead and slip stitch to the corner of the star. Now you're going to go ahead and chain 1 and fasten off. Make sure to leave a long tail end to sew your pockets onto the cardigan. And here's the long tail end to sew it on. And then don't forget to also weave in your ends on the back. Yeah, so it's time for some more sewing. We'll be sewing the panels together on the back side now. So for the best way I can explain it, you are going to sew only the back of these 2 edges together. It may even be easier for you to put both panels on top of each other, and you're going to sew from the top of those 2 seams all the way down to that bottom corner. And yeah, that's like the best way for me to put it. So go ahead and thread your needle. And using the same method as we did to sew the panels originally, we're going to start at the 2nd chain of the corner. And you're just going to pick up the outside loops and sew all the way across the panel. And just keep on going until you reach the end. So you can tell here I had started sewing from the bottom up, and I finished at the top where the sleeves meet. So now on both ends, you're just going to secure your tail end, weave in your ends, and snip off the excess. Now that that's finished, all that's left to do is sew on the pockets, do the cuffs, and you're done. But also feel free to not add the cuffs if you don't want to, because that is also totally fine. To start your cuffs, you're going to go ahead and grab your 4mm hook again, and we're going to take the yarn and attach it to the right side of the seam. You're then going to go ahead and chain 1 and single crochet in that same space. And I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you have a better look. So now we're going to go ahead into the next gap and place another single crochet. Now you're going to place a single crochet into every single stitch all the way around until you reach the end of this row. When you reach the end, you're just going to simply slip stitch back to that single crochet in the beginning. Now to show you what we just did, by placing those single crochets in all of those stitches around, it actually starts to make the sleeve close towards the end. So it makes a smaller opening for your hand to fit through. For this next row, you're going to go ahead and chain 1, and we will be placing single crochet decreases into every stitch all the way around. And I'm going to go ahead and give you a better look at how to do that. So you're going to place your hook through the first stitch, pull up a loop, place it through the next stitch, pull up another loop, wrap around, and pull through all 3 loops. So you just single crocheted 2 stitches together. And we're going to just do that all the way around until we reach the end. So now I'm on to the last few stitches. And if you see you have 1 stitch left, just place a single crochet in there. You're completely fine. It will not make a difference, I promise. After that, we're going to go ahead and slip stitch to the first stitch of the round. And now you're going to see that the armhole is drastically smaller. And that's what gives this very cute balloon puffy effect for the sleeve of this cardigan. For this next row, you're going to go ahead and chain 3. And we're going to place a single double crochet into every single stitch all the way around. Once you're done placing that last stitch, you're going to go ahead and slip stitch to the beginning of the row. Now here's the fun part, chain up 3. And we're going to be doing a pattern of front post double crochets and back post double crochets. So instead of placing your hook through the top of the stitch, we're going to loop around the back of the stitch, and this will create a front post double crochet. Now to do a back post double crochet, you're going to do the same thing, but go around through the back side of it. And you're going to go ahead and continue this pattern all the way around until you reach the end of this row. Once you finish up this row, like usual, you're going to go ahead and slip stitch to the top chain of the beginning of the row. Now you're going to go ahead and repeat the same pattern of the previous row until you reach the desired length of your cuff. And go ahead and meet me at the end. Once you've reached the desired length of your cuff, you're just going to slip stitch to the beginning of the row, chain 1, and then fasten off and sew in your ends. And now you've made a cute little cuff for your cardigan. You're going to go ahead and repeat that entire process to the other arm sleeve to create your second cuff. And at the end, you should be left with 2 cuffs just like these. Now you just have one last step and your cardigan is complete. To sew on your right pocket, you'll place it on your cardigan like this, sew all the way around the edges until you reach this corner. And if you'd like, this is where you use those stitch markers to place your pockets on the cardigan to make sure it's even. And you do the exact same thing to the left side, starting from the top and going clockwise until you reach that last corner. And you want to make sure not to sew all the way around so you can actually have a pocket. And be sure to weave in your ends really good. I kind of just wiggled mine through all these little stitches and cut it off, and that was it. Now finish up your other pocket and you're done.